Orlando Sentinel critic Roger Moore describes this movie as a sometimes heavy-handed sermon about political apathy among the youth. The stakes of media collusion with government and the fog of war is almost certain to scare off the people it is intended to reach. Peter Rainier of the Christian Science Monitor says it carries a full head of steam that is indistinguishable from a lot of hot air. And Roger Ebert tosses in a suggestion worthy of this very podcast, saying it can be presented about as well as a radio play. On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we decide the fate of Lions for Lambs.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be? It's the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters. Welcome to Ruined Childhoods.
Hey, Dan, how's it going?
I'm going well, John. I am going well. It is going well. Speaking is not. Hopefully, will go better consideringly of what we are doing this evening, talking about a movie that is very much talking.
Right. So
in Lions for Lambs.
Let me just kind of carve a pathway for people who are maybe a little confused why a podcast that has spent 156 episodes talking about mostly cult and classic movies, and then here we are talking about the 2007 war drama Lions for Lambs. And here's where things go. At the end of this episode, you're going to hear a song that is very much in like referencing this movie. And it made me want to cover this episode to be able to like access this song. But it is the first episode in March of 2022.
Yes.
And so it fits in with our theme of vaguely March-related movies.
Lions, of course, you know, the old adage that March comes in like a lion and out like a lamb. And that's what we're doing. And of course we began February with Silence of the Lambs. So
that's true. Yeah.
That one's out. But, for the rest of our month, we're going to kind of stick loosely to those March ideas. We're not going to be as firm with it, but there will be a smidgen of March, a sprinkling of March throughout the films that we choose. And remember to, keep your, ears open for hints as to what our next episode is going to focus on. Those hints, sometimes they're tiny. They might slip away. They might get away from you a little bit.
Yeah.
And sometimes that happens. Yeah.
So Dan, you just said something about keeping your ears open, and I want to share a
You can't
story.
Close your ears.
I want to share a story from my childhood. I don't know where you would have probably been in high school when this was happening, or maybe like you stayed with somebody else. So for anybody who's listening who doesn't know, Dan and I are brothers, and we grew up in the same household. And at one point when I was a kid, our parents went out of town for like a week or so on some sort of vacation, and I don't know the details. And we had a live-in babysitter for a week, a woman whose name I believe was Mrs. Middleman. Is this ringing any bells for you, Dan?
Are you thinking? Is it that old lady?
She loved watching Jeopardy.
There was
who could blame her? By the way,
Jeopardy's awesome.
She was probably in her 60s.
There was an older lady. She lived next to my childhood friend, Michael Margetich.
Okay.
And I remember she stayed with us like once or twice.
Yeah.
I did not like her.
Oh, no, I didn't care for her much either. She's a listener. Hi. Anyway.
No, I feel like that.
But let me tell you.
If she's still alive, like.
Chances are. Yeah. So I have to say I have this very specific memory of hearing her talking on the phone to somebody saying, probably in a very like heavy New Jersey accent, I'm keeping my eyes and ears peeled for a new Honda. And I think about it at least once a week. Like, I don't know why. There's just these moments where you're just like, and one of the reasons why it continues to stay in my head is because I think about it, and then I think to myself, why do I remember you? Why am I remembering you? And by thinking that, it like makes the memory dig in deeper.
It really does. It's funny because you start analyzing it and you're like, why were there, Honda dealerships are all over suburban New Jersey.
Right.
One would not need to keep their eyes.
I think that it was the
peeled.
keeping the eyes and ears peeled, that part that like, and about it being a Honda, like, and for me, I think that always kind of stayed in my mind. It's just like, Hondas must be like pretty okay cars. Like that was kind of the thought for a Honda, but like the keeping my eyes and ears peeled. It's interesting.
Limited edition Accord.
I don't know.
There's not that many of those around.
So I don't know. You just mentioned that, and then it popped up again. And now that we're talking about
your ears
it,
peeled. That sounds painful.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like Molly Gottlieb's Miss Congeniality, twist with her character pulling the hair back. And by the way, just shout out again to Molly, and thanks to Molly.
Yeah, thanks, Molly. That was cool.
For chatting, and it's always. I always love. We can't always have guests, and sometimes our recording schedule is so erratic and unpredictable. It really makes it challenging. But when we can chat with someone, especially someone who is involved, with the film we're talking about, always a pleasure. Especially a pleasure when it's a kid who I knew and was a camp counselor for. So.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That was really cool. We don't have any actors from Lions for Lambs on this episode, mostly because there aren't very many. It's a pretty small cast, and there's some pretty big players in there.
But I'd give an arm to interview pretty much any of them.
Yeah, I agree.
Actually, hold on a second. Hold on. So, pop quiz hotshot.
Oh,
I have met and conversed, not just like bumped elbow, like shook hands or whatever, and conversed with one of the cast members of Lions for Lambs. We'll see if you can guess, but I was going to save that one until we went through the cast.
Okay. See, my first guess would be the like.
Well, it would.
I'm going to do the synopsis. I'm going to do the synopsis, and then we'll go through the cast. So the synopsis is kind of funky because this is one that bops between a few different storylines that are happening. One of them happens in the past, and it's very clear which one is in the past. And then there's one that's happening kind of semi-concurrently with another. And
well, it's like they're all happening concurrently, but there's one of them, I guess technically two of them there's like a flashback that kind of connects two of the stories.
Right. Okay, so that's true. So, all right. A college professor tells a promising yet privileged student about two former students from less desirable backgrounds who chose a military pathway in an effort to further their chances of ending up in grad school. But then also, a charismatic Republican senator attempts to influence a journalist to cover the story of their new attempt to surprise attack the Taliban by stationing troops on specific peaks in Iran, which is conflicting for her since she assumes that his attempt to position himself as a viable president. Sorry, I think I wrote this one weird. Which is conflicting for her since she assumes that this is an attempt to position himself as a viable presidential candidate. Concurrently, we see the end result. A helicopter is set to courier troops to a peak in Iraq, but is shot down by the Taliban, leaving two survivors stranded and wounded. They happen to be the students from earlier who just wanted a better chance at a proper education. I mean, there's so much more to it. So, right. So the cast includes the director, Robert Redford, as the professor, and the privileged student is played by a very early in his career Andrew Garfield. This is even pre Social Network. And and then we have the two students played by the two students from the past, played by Michael Pena and Derek Luke,
who are the soldiers stranded on the peak.
Exactly. And then we have Meryl Streep as the journalist Janine Roth, and Tom Cruise as Senator Jasper Irving. And the other two people who are listed on Wikipedia are Peter Berg, who is the I don't know if
he's
it's Air Force or
Marines
commanding officer. And then we have Kevin Dunn as the Meryl Streep's, I guess, boss, the station manager or whatever.
Well, not the station manager, like more like the producer or like news editor, maybe.
It says ANX editor. So
yeah. I guess he's the news editor for the news program, and that's a whole subplot about the network that she reports for.
Yeah.
Right. And it's fun because there's some part, like there's one part where she talks about like a video that's the most downloaded. And you have to remember, this is 2007. This is just at the beginning of
2 years
the
after
smartphone.
YouTube came about. Yeah, it's the year that the
Same
iPhone
year
comes
as the
out.
iPhone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. So who is it that that you've had a run-in with? My guess.
It is one of the people that you named.
Okay, then my guess is going to be Derek Luke.
Why is your guess Derek Luke?
Because you've never mentioned it before, and he's the only person who I don't know. Am I right?
Ding. Where's my bell to ring? Ding, ding, ding. Yes, you are correct. It is Derek Luke. And yes, there we go. Yes. Yes. So and here's my little story. So I met Derek Luke in 2002.
Okay.
So picture
5 years before Lions for Lambs.
Yes.
I think about time as before Lions for Lambs and after Lions for Lambs.
Right. So this is definitely BL4L and B4L4L, or I don't know. Anyway, I used to go to, so established, we are brothers. And our mother used to belong to this, she had like a membership to this film series that she would go to at like the local AMC. And it was, you would see things that were like more independent, and things that were, that were coming out soon. And they would usually have someone there to talk about the film. I want to say Christine Vachon was there for, what was she? She was a producer. I want to say it was for Dangerous Lives of Altar Boys.
Okay.
But they did a screening of Antoine Fisher, a film directed by Denzel Washington and starring Derek Luke.
I didn't realize that he was in that. Gotcha.
And he's a Jersey boy, and so I used to
girls
go.
Don't cry.
What?
Jersey Boys.
Oh, yes. Sorry. For some reason.
Come on, Dan. That was an actual one that like, that was the obvious one. That was the low-hanging fruit.
I know. I was on IMDb, and for some reason you sang that, and I was like, Billy Joel. Uptown Girl. That's, anyway. Back to Derek Luke. So we chatted
real quick, time out. I was texting somebody before and I was writing Bjork and it autocorrected to Billy J. Go on.
Okay, we're ricocheting tangents.
Derek Luke.
So Derek.
Here's the thing, Dan.
Time,
here's the thing, Dan. We're not going to have too much to talk about for Lions for Lambs.
I can't beg to differ. Okay. I have quite a bit to say. I also watched this. I kind of watched this movie twice over the last week. So I kind of had it on once, and I was like doing things and paying attention. But I was like, we got a baby coming in about a month, so I'm putting together baby stuff, and I've got Lions for Lambs on in the background. And then I watched it again, and really kind of, I focused in a lot more. So I have insights here. Anyway. I was at the time an aspiring young actor, and asked Derek Luke for his words of advice, and
Did he have
just kind
any?
of like chatted with him about like did he? I'm sure he did.
He's like, work
I
with
don't.
Denzel Washington.
Yeah.
First tip right off the bat.
Have you heard of Denzel Washington?
Yeah, have you heard of this guy Denzel Washington? You should work
with him.
Work with him.
Work with him, and then next Robert Redford.
Then 5 years later. Well, I guess 5 years after. Yeah, whatever. Anyway.
No, but right. So anyway, so that's how I ended up meeting Derek Luke.
Okay.
And that's all I have to say about that.
I knew you were going to say that.
What I do want to say before going into the episode, though, is that we are recording this in the days following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So
yes.
But I want to note that as we're talking about this, I want to keep that in context. And
sure.
I think, usually, we a lot of the movies we talk about are a little less serious, and we can be a little less serious with them. But I think going into talking about this movie, particularly the themes it covers, and generally speaking, we don't want to, make light of the loss of life.
No.
But I think this movie really lends itself to the current moment, and that's kind of how I'm looking at it a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that in a lot of ways, the themes of this movie are extremely evergreen, and it just so happens that we're living in a moment right now where it's exceptionally prescient to, bring up this idea of U.S. involvement in war, and also the way that politicians can, interject themselves into foreign matters in a way that can be very harmful in an effort to position themselves better.
Right. Yes, and I think it's doubly prescient in that it talks about this movie is about the war in Afghanistan.
Right.
It's about fighting in Afghanistan, a war that we our troops were just pulled from Afghanistan not a year ago, and we it's still very relevant. It's still very, controversial. The idea of being, of having our troops there and then taking them out, and what happens when we take them out.
Right.
And I feel like almost like this movie was made like while it was all still going on, and when there really wasn't a defined, like, we didn't know how things were going to end in Afghanistan. So I think watching it from our perspective now, it works better. So this movie was not a financial success.
No.
Critics mostly gave it a pounding.
Yeah.
And
so here's my take on just the movie as a whole. It's not what I expected it was going to be. I thought it was going to be more war. And I think that's what most people were expecting, and were disappointed when it was mostly talking and these little, moments that take place in one location each. And I think that for me, that worked a lot better, because that's what I find more interesting. And I really enjoyed seeing how it blended. It blended a lot of different things all into one to kind of give you a better understanding of the different players involved. And looking at it through the eyes of a promising student who comes from a privileged background, who seems to have like not a care in the world, and the way that his college professor makes him really consider, looking at things from a different perspective, and using these two former students who we are seeing at that moment going through the results of this thing that's happening, this plot from this the senator that's, trying to position himself in a certain way with this one journalist. And the way that they talk to each other, I felt was really compelling. And it really had me paying attention in a way that I don't think that I would have if it was told completely from the, battle perspective.
Right. Well, and it's what I think works about this movie. And it's also why I think it works better now than it probably did in 2007. Yeah. And I do want to come back to the discussion of Irving and how the politicians are the ones. What I love about the structure of this is that you see, the people pulling the string. You see, like Tom Cruise's character, Senator Irving, is pulling the string. Is the one pulling the strings, making the decisions. And it's kind of like they cover all the bases in this, where it's. They talk about, like, yes, he went to West Point, and like he does have he never was in combat, but has some military training.
Right.
So,
and the way that also he uses Meryl Streep's character, Janine Roth, is that like she was the one to kind of position him as being like the future of the GOP. And it's kind of like, do you want to go back on your word, or do you want to prove yourself right by, I don't know. It's just a little touch that didn't necessarily need to be there, but made it work a lot better. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, not at all. The conflicts are like there's a lot of complexity to it. And like the conflict of her character, of Meryl Streep's character, of like taking this and like the moment when she recognizes that it's propaganda, she does as much as say that, but and then when you realize, and I didn't catch this until the second time around, but in the synopsis, you were talking about how the two, the Arian and Ernie, the Derek Luke and Michael Pena characters were like accidentally dropped onto that peak.
Yeah. Right.
Which, I mean, I don't want to, no spoilers, but I mean, they were like, it comes out, they were used as bait.
Right.
To draw out Al-Qaeda. And it's really, and Tom Cruise, man, I feel like this was during like the Tom Cruise rehabilitation tour that started with like maybe around like, I think wasn't Mission Impossible 3 like couch jumping time? Or was that after?
I can't say for sure exactly what the timeline would have been. But
I remember this was part of that career.
Okay.
It was like this and Valkyrie.
Valkyrie. I saw that in the theater.
That were like, Tom Cruise is like, we're going to put Tom Cruise in some big movies, some serious movies, but damned if he doesn't do a great job. He reminded me so much of like Paul Ryan. Remember him?
Oh yeah. I thought that he was fantastic in this. I really enjoyed watching him. And, these days you see him a lot more in the, action movies, the Mission Impossibles, and, he did The Mummy and, stuff like that. And it's just like, going back and looking at some of these movies that maybe I missed at the time, was like, man, he really is good when he is given like, a good script to work with and is with a good director. And let's play one of the scenes that you're talking about between the two of them.
You're about to implement another new strategy, regardless of the human cost or the financial cost, because you predict
we thought
that
deeply
maybe
about the human cost when we were planning this strategy.
What were your estimates exactly?
What I can say is that this strategy has patience and determination at its core. It ensures that it puts our fighting men in spots where they can face, fight, and kill the enemy, so that we can then go about rebuilding that country. And if it takes 10 years, that's how long we stay. We do whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Then why did it take 3 years to up-armor our Humvees?
They're up-armored now, at my constant urging.
Add-ons don't provide the same protection, Senator, you know that. And why does the president insist on spending billions on subs and fighter planes that are completely useless in this kind of war?
What do you think I'm working on?
And why do we send 150,000 troops to a country that did not attack us, and 1/10 that number to the one that did?
How many times are you people going to ask the same question?
Till we get the answer.
Yeah, so I don't know. I love their back and forth. They play so well off of each other, and it's I don't know. She's asking all the questions that you would want to ask, but like wouldn't have the balls to ask, unless you were in her very particular position.
Right. Yeah. And I also love that, like, it's another part of the whole picture is the media that either sells the war,
Right.
or turns the public, like, puts the public in favor of the war or against it. And I mean, in a lot of ways, it's a much different ball game now, and like you're seeing the roots of this, like with the part where she talks about like the most downloaded video, like that's the roots of today's, with like, oh, it's got like 6 million hits on YouTube in its first 2 hours up,
right?
That's the that's the development. But coming back to the structure, I love the idea that you have these. You've got the politician talking about the plan.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the soldiers enacting it. You've got the actual, like, you've got the chess pieces, basically, and then you've got the academics. You've got the people who are talking about it, and it kind of answers that question about, well, like, what good is talking about it. And what you see from that between Redford and Garfield's characters is that there's the possibility that talking about it can bring one of these people, and they go into it because Andrew Garfield is like, fine, why aren't you doing anything? Why aren't you a senator?
Yeah. And I don't have a clip pulled from that necessarily, but I do want to play just a clip of Robert Redford and Andrew Garfield playing off of each other. This is kind of the beginning of their meeting with each other, because I just want to point out the great chemistry that they have together. And Andrew Garfield right now is kind of in this huge boom in his career. Tick, tick, boom. I did not mean to do that, but tick, tick, boom. And, of course, he was in a movie that I'm sure that the spoilers have gone out now, involves him and two other people playing essentially the same character. And, he's just kind of, I don't know. I'm really happy for him, because he's
nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actor. I mean, he's having a moment.
I think he's fantastic. He does interesting movies like Under the Silver Lake, and he's I don't know, just kind of seems like a weirdo, and I appreciate a lot of that about him. And to see so early in his career how well he's able to play off of one of, like, I don't know, the greatest, like, actors,
cinema legend.
Yeah, and the way that they're able to play off each other it just is incredible. So let's listen to just a little bit of their dynamic.
Yeah, I don't know, Doc. I have never ever been this busy in my life.
But with?
Well, just like all my other classes.
This is your major.
And there's also a young lady, too.
Oh, yeah?
Uh-huh.
Oh, is this the one that you jockey to sit next to when you do come to my class?
No.
What else is keeping you busy?
President of my fraternity.
Hey.
Uh-huh.
Well, hail to the chief.
Oh, come on now. You're in a house, right?
Yeah.
Gotta remember how busy it can get.
Oh, yeah. With the 4-day weekends and the 30-minute study session.
That's not what I mean.
Well, you asked me what I remembered.
All right, so what? You don't think the school should be as social as it is academic, kind of like getting two educations?
Well, I think if you can't balance the two, you shouldn't be here. I also think that most of the kids that argue that one out loud are the guys with the 2.4s trying to justify 30 grand a year for all those C's. Okay, my friend. You've aced a lot of the exams you've shown up for, but you've only been to 8 classes this semester. Now, that'd be a Hall of Fame run. We only met once a week.
Yeah, so I don't know. I just really like the way that they play off of each other, and it gives you a lot of information about the kind of person that Robert Redford's character is, the kind of professor that you can feel comfortable, like, bullshitting with a little bit, and just kind of like being real with. And that comes into play when we kind of go back in time and see him also interacting with Derek Luke and Michael Pena's character. And Yeah, I don't know. And just like that, the whole classroom in general, it's a bit of a lecture hall, but it's not like a huge class. And yeah,
It is, but you can tell the students in that class feel the freedom to, like, like, so when Arian and Ernie are giving their presentation to the
Yeah.
class, their classmates don't have, like, they know it's the type of environment where they can speak up and they can have a back and forth, and they can even roast each other a little bit, which they do.
And the character in that class that seems to speak up the most seems like another privileged white guy.
Oh, he's the whitest kid in
Yeah.
I mean, he's all due respect. I hope I'm not offending anyone with the term. He's a ginger.
It's true. Yeah. And
So-
of course, the characters of Arian and Ernest are black and Mexican, and they don't seem to have the same comfort level, until they're up in front of the class giving their presentation. And then once they kind of get fired up, then they start to kind of go back. And I couldn't figure out exactly what the class was. I mean, it seemed like a political science, maybe just a general political science class, or if it was like like poli-sci debate or something, because it seems like the whole idea is for people to get fired up and like chant at each other.
Well, although their whole presentation was about proposing, maybe not legislation, kind of legislation. They're making a proposal that high school students devote their junior years, so 11th grade, not to academics, but to public service of some sort. Whether they say Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, Teach for America, one of those.
Yeah, I remember just vaguely, some of what they said, but that was the gist of it.
Yeah, they were talking about, like, that's their proposal, which there's definitely some holes in it, but it's but their point is, like, the whole point of this is that, like, if you don't get engaged in what's going on, what stake do you have in your democracy, in your government, in everything? And I think it also touches upon the fact that a lot of people, especially I would say younger people, but I think even Gen Xers and millennials don't see the impact of government and legislation on their lives, except for in the broadest of strokes.
Sure. Yeah.
Like taxes, and like Joe Biden says, okay, we are not going to send troops on the ground into Ukraine. That's very broad strokes. That doesn't mean we are not going to have troops stationed in all of our NATO allies bordering that area. I mean, that's exactly, what's happening. So not giving away military secrets here. So they've already been given away, if I know them.
They're listening.
So it's I find it so prescient. And I feel like this movie, it does work a lot in the broad strokes and in the generalizations, though not as not as much as something like, and with all due respect to Aaron Sorkin, whose work I generally really enjoy, but Aaron Sorkin, especially with things like The West Wing, the strokes are even broader.
Yeah, and it seems like it's got a very Sorkin-y pace to it. I mean, the screenwriter, Matthew Michael Carnahan, I checked out some of the other stuff that he's done, and it's not like a huge filmography.
Well, but similarly to this film, Dark Waters with Mark Ruffalo, which I
enjoyed it a lot.
Very good movie, very interesting. And State of Play, which I've got a great State of Play. I have a fun, interesting when I saw State of Play in the theater kind of story.
Okay. I really liked State of Play, so I'm happy to do that one sometime.
I really, yeah. Okay, so maybe we'll save that story for another time. It's basically let's put it this way: it is the only movie that I have ever. I would say it's the only movie that I ever walked out of, but I did not walk out of it voluntarily.
Okay.
Cliffhanger for when we do our State of Play episode.
Oh man, is it restless leg syndrome? Is it the runs? What's it going to be?
Do you really want me to tell the story now and then I'll retell it when we finally do State of Play?
I think so. Sure.
Okay, so I was going to see State of Play with my now wife, then girlfriend, and we were going to it was a late afternoon show. It was like maybe a 4 p.m. show, something like that, I think, on a weekend. And she was meeting, or no, I think it was like earlier than that in New York City. And she was meeting like her grad school friends for brunch and got too drunk too. And she's like, of course, like didn't eat anything, like got like drank and then could not sit through the movie.
Oh my God.
Could not sit through. And this was like, this is one of those movies that's like, she's going to like it.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, it's definitely one of my preferred genres, which is like journalism movies, where
like journalistic political thriller.
Yeah. I think I think this past like year or two, that's when I've discovered like, I think that's my zone.
That's your go-to genre.
I think that it's my go-to genre if I want to watch a movie that I'm going to be engaged in.
Yeah.
I love the pace of it. I love people doing stuff that their like managing editors are not thrilled with. And, but they're still going to do it anyway. And
right. And the managing editor, like begrudgingly, because they're like, geez, I know you've never been wrong about this before. And or like you were only wrong about this that one time before. Yeah. And we had that big lawsuit from that congresswoman. And
right. Exactly.
I know and love the genre. It's those are great movies. I tend to really enjoy. They're also like they're much more story based and they feel a lot more like I just love like the cinema of the 1970s and especially those like intense even like something like All the President's Men or movies like
Robbie
The Conversation.
Reds.
So Robert Redford all over that shit. So we come back to Lions for Lambs.
Yes.
It's got this interesting, it's kind of like an edgier Sorkin where it's like still like didactic, but without the dramatic score, I guess. And with more profanity.
And a lot of people just sitting and talking rather than walking and talking.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll stand up for dramatic effect.
There's a couple of walk arounds, no walk and talks.
There's a lot of just sitting in. There's not a lot of location changes.
No, I mean it goes between. You've got you've got Redford's office. You've got
the classroom.
You've got the classroom. You've got Tom Cruise's office.
Yep.
You've got the news station where Streep works, but not until the third act.
Just a little bit.
You've got the battlefield. You've got the command center
and the inside of the chopper.
Right, the inside. Like briefly. I mean, you have the outside of the school building too, but where you see Andrew Garfield skillfully ride up on his bike with a drink carrier carrying 2 Starbucks coffees that do not spill a drop.
And that's another thing, and that's not specific to this movie, but a pet peeve of mine where it's just like, put literally anything in cups. Those like white coffee cups are not fooling anybody when you're like waving them around willy-nilly.
Oh, you see, I took it as a characterization piece. I took it as like, this kid's pretty slick. Like this kid's pretty slick. And he's like, I just feel like it's kind of like it's that move, that like Fonzie move of like, I'm going to ride up on my bike with this drink tray.
Oh, it's the white privilege move.
Well, yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
It's the way. Well, yes, exactly. But I feel like that was intentional in this.
Yeah.
No. When I say he doesn't spill a drop, it's not like
It's
calling
just because
out
he's a cool guy.
the lack of reality. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's that like I don't have a worry. I don't have a thing to worry about. I don't have fucking. If I drop these coffees, I'm just gonna go buy 2 more.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sweat it.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. He's
Yeah.
the kind of kid who doesn't break a sweat. And man, like Andrew Garfield's so good. He's so good at that.
He's really good.
He really is.
And then at the end, when he's back at the frat house watching the news, and he sees the ticker at the bottom talking about this thing that's going on, and to see the change in his character's demeanor is really fascinating.
Yeah, from the beginning, where you could see, because it starts with him watching the news, or is that? Wait, does it start? It's not like the ending isn't like the beginning again. I'm sorry. No. So it starts with him kind of watching the news and like you could tell it's registering with him. He's not shrugging it off. But he's not ready to dive in yet.
No.
You know what this movie I feel like it kind of fits into a shrub genre. A shrub
genre is about plants.
A shrub genre, Edward Scissorhands. But I feel like I was like, okay, this is the type of movie that if Crash was like, it fits into that same, and I also think of Crash because Michael Pena. Well, also like the movie Crash, I was not a big fan of, though I thought several of the performances were great, including, and Michael Pena's I thought was the best in the movie.
Yeah,
but
great.
I felt like Crash was like hitting you over the head with a big cartoon sledgehammer that says message on it. And I felt it was like, it was too much. And this movie, I think it has that same heavy-handedness, but with more nuance.
And it's also it's not trying to make it seem like it's a magic trick by having, the storylines converge, because this one, it's just like, pay attention because you'll see why these are all converging, the entire time.
Right. Yeah. Well, no. Yeah. And they don't converge in some,
no,
now all the characters, like Meryl Streep is going to call Robert Redford on the phone and, they're exes or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
Like, yeah, it doesn't, I like that it doesn't quite go to that length. But I felt it kind of reminded me of that because it was this movie that came out like an Oscar season and didn't do anything. It was not the year for this. This was the year of like No Country for Old Men and There Will Be Blood. So there was no space for Lions for Lambs. But I thought, I was like, how is it that like, Crash can win Best Picture, Green Book can win Best Picture, and those are much more like didactic, heavy-handed kind of worthy. Like they're not like they're like Green Book, at least like I watched it on an airplane, it was fine. It's like, okay, I'm enjoying this on an airplane, that's fine. But I still have moments of, okay. Whereas Lions for Lambs, I had a couple of those moments where it definitely was venturing into that territory, but it pulled back. And to come back to one of the comments in the intro,
the
Roger Ebert quote about it being well served as a radio play. And I think this brings us to what are we going to do with this? But the reason why I don't know if I agree 100% is because there are moments where you see expressions on faces in close-ups, and it happens definitely happens with Tom Cruise, definitely happens with Andrew Garfield, definitely happens with Meryl Streep. It doesn't happen as much because Redford's character doesn't really go through a change.
No, he doesn't go through a change, but when you see the looks of realization on his face, especially when he's talking with, the two students at the beginning, Derek Luke and Michael Pena, especially when he's with them he takes them to lunch, and to kind of experience their back and forth, and there's a lot more going on in his mind there, because that's the only moment where he's learning something.
Right.
You know, in the one with Andrew Garfield, he's, you know, educating, and the thing with the lecture hall, he's being professorial, I'd say, and kind of stoking the fires of the, you know, hot debate. But yeah, it's in that scene where he's out to lunch with the two guys where it's you see more of his response to things and his reactions to things, and kind of the way that he's processing, because he is concerned that he gave them the idea to enlist in the military, even though like they state that, you know, he didn't. They did it, you know, on their own. And there's this idea that because he had served in Vietnam, it was kind of like his influence on that. And he tells them like, well, I didn't enlist, I was drafted. And you know, there's, I don't know, a lot more to his character in that scene than in any of his other scenes. So anyway,
Agreed.
to go back to what you're saying, yes, absolutely. And I think that there's just a lot of emotion that goes into also moments where you see Meryl Streep's character when Tom Cruise's character leaves his office, and she's kind of looking around at the you know, clippings and stuff, the things that are framed on his walls. And also like when you see the pictures of him with like George W. Bush and, you know, stuff like that, where it's just like those add so much texture to the complete story of what his character is about. And yeah, for those reasons, I think that radio play wouldn't necessarily feel, I don't know, complete enough.
It would take
you could tell
away
the story, but it
would
wouldn't
take
be
away a
compelling.
lot of the nuance. It would take away a lot.
Yeah.
And by the way, speaking of performances and moments with nuance, Peter Berg, who plays the commanding officer, because when he's first telling them the mission, he's spewing it's propaganda. He's just spitting out the propaganda that he's given, and it's very, you know, hoorah, you know, gung ho. But he turns back on that when he realizes what's going on. And the moments, and watching them, and I thought it was such a effective touch to have these scenes where he and the other you know, officers are watching this like night vision satellite imagery of Arian and Ernie, you know, trapped and surrounded by Al Qaeda. It's like just they're so helpless, and there's a great transition where
let's listen to that. Right, let's listen to that.
Yes.
In the air, but vector them halfway between Pamela left and us. We're not going to put them in that same gauntlet. Put them in a holding pattern until we know what's going on. Can we see anything? You got a predator up?
I don't know for how long. Cold front's still coming. G2 says it's packing big snow, maybe 70 mile an hour.
All right, I want to see as much as I can for as long as I can. What's the ETA in getting a fast mover out
I got
there?
a Warthog that'll take 20, 25 minutes to get out there, but the margin of safety...
Scramble it. Do it. I would love to talk to the motherfucker that said this mountaintop was secure.
Afghan terrain demands that small, specialized teams establish forward operating points.
I've heard of forward operating bases, but not forward operating points. Point sounds smaller than base.
Because it is. What? Just, come on, say it.
Sorry, no, I just, it also sounds like Pentagonese for bait.
Janine, it's not like we're putting one or two guys on the mountain here. Right.
So I let that play a little bit longer. I let that play a little longer because I love that part. And I mean, I know that we're talking about how this wouldn't play as a radio play, and we're playing audio clips from a movie,
right? But with the recommendation that if you like what you're hearing,
I also want to point out the difference in the score from when you go from one scene to the next, where it's like this, like boom, 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 boom.
Oh, I
boom,
really
boom,
like the
and then it
score.
goes to nothing. It goes to nothing, and because it's like the senator's not feeling the pressure, because he's the guy who's just like, this is the way it's gonna go, and it's gonna be great, and it's a great idea, and you know, this is what's gonna, you know, put me up there and, you know, in history is coming up with this brilliant plan. And
Well,
I'm just so cool and confident. And she makes a good she makes a good point. And in another part where I don't think I have a clip for it, but she's just like, yeah, it's easy for you to say you're sitting here in the air conditioned office. And it's so true. And it works so well that like they're feeling all this pressure. You hear this like boom, 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 boom music. And yeah, just going straight to him where it's just like nothing.
Well, I think they said, yeah, I really like that. And I think that they, I don't know, maybe, do you think that they're giving the message that, a lot of these politicians who go to military schools do that so that they have the like whatever quote unquote credibility to make these decisions. That's what I'm saying. Like there's a lot in this movie. There's a lot going on. And I do think that it's something that if it perhaps was not appealing in 2007, it may be appealing. I mean, you know, it's definitely hitting a little closer to home this week, and I mean, definitely figuratively, closer to home. But so I guess, John, unless you have anything else to add,
no.
I'm ready to
So you know, we certainly heard from Roger Ebert. What is it that you might do given the opportunity to bring this property back somehow?
Okay, so I had a couple of ideas. And so you know, of course the idea of a stage play popped into my head, and I could see how it would be
I had the
staged.
same thought. Yeah.
I could really, in fact, I would do it if I could have it where the center of the stage was kind of a rotating set between.
I was thinking the same thing.
Right, and then were you thinking to have on either like extreme like side of the stage Arian and Ernie stationed? Because I was like the visual that, because when you're staging a play, you want to use visual meaning, and I thought, well, if you have them on either side of the stage, you have like far stage left, far stage right, maybe like down stage, especially if you have a theater where you have like a little bit of stage in front of the like the proscenium. On the sides there, to have them stationed there, and then to have all of the talking happening in the middle, so that your visual representation is these guys' lives in the balances.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
And having the center, and you could have them even come in to do the scenes that are the flashbacks where they're addressing and in fact, I would put, instead of having Redford be in his office, I would have him meeting with Andrew Garfield in the classroom.
Sure, yeah. Reduce one set. Yeah.
Well, also because you've got Irving's office, and then you're going to go to a different office.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Well, and I think that also, but, I mean, having the juxtaposition between the senators, like, you know, very just so office, you know, the guy who's actually, you know, essentially pulling the strings, who's making things kind of go into motion, but having this like very like everything is in its place office that's like huge, and then like the cramped shit all over the place office of the, you know, political science professor who's, you know, actually experience, you know, knows what things are like, especially considering he's actually been in war.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess the other thought I had was, if you're going to get creative with staging, is that you would actually have them stationed somewhere like in the house. You would have them, because they're talking about what's happening. They're talking about what the politicians are doing and what the military is doing. So to have them not almost like, think of a Statler and Waldorf, but not where they're directly commenting on that. But I'm just thinking of like different interesting ways you could stage this, and even in different venues. The Armory in New York City, Fifth Avenue Armory, would be a really cool venue.
I mean, I was also just thinking about how you could totally use that type of thing where like you have the scene where Ernie and Arian are doing their presentation. You could just have them up there with an overhead projector, and then have like the privileged white kid in the audience shouting out and, you know, kind of doing it that way.
Yeah. You'd totally have have plants and have that be you could make it work. But I was thinking about that and I'm like, well, that's kind of broadening the strokes. A lot more. You're playing into the theatricality of it. Whereas as a series, I think, HBO would do, and I say HBO, and it's now really like it used to be where HBO was really the place that was producing things like this. And now it's really most, streamers, could do this, but to have a series where, maybe you rotate between the 3 concurrent storylines, every 3 episodes. And where instead of broadening what you have in the movie, it goes into more detail. Maybe like you get more of the lives of these characters outside. And I was trying to think about, I was like, well, I'm like casting. I was like, damn, Andrew Garfield could probably still pull it off. But
yeah, right. Somebody posted something online, like a picture of him from like maybe The Social Network, and then a picture of him from now, and it's like, he looks younger now.
Yeah. But there are a few other changes that I would make, and so like maybe someone playing that role, I was like, if you go to TV, who would be good? Like maybe if you could easily, gender, I don't think makes a difference with that role, or most of them really. But like Julia Garner is someone who I could see.
She is white hot right now.
But I could see her having that, like being the, like, I'm wrapped up in all of my shit, like, part of especially like the I generation, or the Gen Y, kind of like a lot of that, like very social media oriented.
Yeah.
But also has this, like, maybe that's a conversation that could happen between her and the professor, played by Jeffrey Wright. And
Jeffrey Wright be great. He always looks very professorial.
Yeah. So to have him, be like, yeah, I see, like, you repost a lot of things from, UNICEF, and you repost a lot of but like, what are you actually doing? So playing more into the, keyboard social media warrior. I was thinking you could recast the Jasper Irving, the Tom Cruise role, to be more like maybe a Marjorie Taylor Greene character. And I was like, man, Reese Witherspoon.
Well, here's the thing about that character is that, and yeah, maybe somebody like Reese Witherspoon could pull something like that off, but he is just so like charismatic and like super, like the grin on the face, and just like, he wins people over with his charm, kind of a mentality. And Dan, I sent you the only note that I took about this movie, my notes app. What was the teeth whitening budget on this movie? Everybody's teeth are pristine white.
And I'm glad you pointed that out, because you pointed that out before the second time I watched the movie. So I was watching for that, and I was definitely thinking, I was like, well, Tom Cruise probably, like, his teeth are always that
makes
white.
sense. But for like Andrew Garfield and Robert Redford, like college professor, he should have coffee stained teeth.
Yes, Robert Redford's teeth were artificially whitened, not digitally. I think it was. I was like, did they digitally whiten the teeth? Nope. Actual teeth white, but no, his teeth. When I looked at him, I was like, no.
It's like they all just got like everybody veneers like that day.
So, but yes, but so I was thinking in that. I was kind of thinking in that direction. I mean, like Adam Scott, if you were going to keep the role similar, like Adam Scott would be, could really pull that off, among others. I was thinking Kerry Washington as the reporter. I feel like she's kind of like Scandal ended, and she did those little fires everywhere.
Right. Yeah.
And she's so talented. I feel like she needs more. And this is very, like, if you look at her work in Scandal, you know, she shows like she could pull this off. Of course, it's HBO, so they would either cast Amy Adams or Nicole Kidman.
Yeah, right.
You know, whoever's turn it is.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully Amy Adams.
I'm like, I mean, really, yeah. There's so many. There's really a lot of. There's so much talent out there. I mean, Alison Pill is someone who I know.
Well, right, but now we're getting into like newsroom territory.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
So,
all right. Okay.
you know who I would have as the Meryl Streep's character's editor, Kevin Dunn.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Kevin Dunn. I love Kevin Dunn as just like the worn out.
He's always so good. Yeah.
Lives
Has
on
that man ever
Alka-Seltzer.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Washington, D.C. Like I feel like this is the new phase in his career where it used to be like playing the, whatever, like sympathetic, like he's John Candy's brother in Only the Lonely.
Right.
Those kind of roles to now where he's just like, he's that Washington, whether he's media or like his role on Veep.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
He's so good.
Kevin Dunn is fantastic.
Yeah. Big shout out to Kevin Dunn.
Yeah.
Huge fans.
Yeah. He's like so consistent for such a long time, and I'm so embarrassed that like I can't think of more stuff that he's in because he's in so much. And
he's
like,
great.
He's run the gamut in terms of like genre. He's like him and Brian Doyle Murray.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's like I can do Caddyshack and JFK.
Yeah.
So anyway, so you were thinking a play?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of honestly, this was a really difficult one. For a number of reasons, I think mostly just because of the themes behind it, because it's a fictional story about a real war, and that does make it a little bit challenging because you don't want to be exploitative in terms of like, unless you did it like following different wars in history, like the Revolutionary War, like telling, just concurrent stories about, things from different, I don't know. I don't think it would work as well. I mean, that's a pretty extreme example, but like, I don't know. That's where I started to go. But that's just where I started to go. And then I was thinking like stage play would be really good because it's so dialogue driven. And, the visual moments that you do see, and especially when it comes to things like those overhead projections or the screen where it shows the like infrared or whatever it was, it's like those could be projections. Like those could be, there's totally ways to do that. Or like Meryl Streep seeing the, all those different accolades and photos on the wall and everything, like that could totally work as projection, or it could just be kind of written differently to make it better for the stage. But like, it seems like it's already there for it. I even checked to see if the screenwriter, Matthew Michael Carnahan had, written anything for the stage, but I didn't see anything about that because it seemed like it was designed that way, or it's a choice that Robert Redford made to make it feel more intense or something. I don't know. There's always people doctoring scripts and stuff like that. So who knows?
I mean, here's the thing. It's like, I don't think anyone's jonesing for a new like iteration of Lions for Lambs, but I do feel that it was underseen when it came out for good reasons, legitimate reasons. But I do think it's worth coming back to, especially because it's the type of drama that can help people better understand like these global like military operations and politics. I mean, it still comes across
a lot
as liberal.
A lot of the reviews that I read for it were kind of panning it for being like super ultra liberal, and I mean, maybe because that's kind of where I stand on things. I was just like, but no, it's just that it's pointing out what you don't want to see. I was like totally getting up in arms about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is liberal. It doesn't mean it's wrong.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. So, I don't know. it's one of those for me that up until this week just kind of got away, and I don't know. I'm glad that it was something that we were able to revisit, mostly thanks to this song that we're going to play in about a minute. So before we get to that, Dan, I've got to ask you, what are we going to be talking about on our next episode? I tried to get the title in somewhere, but I really couldn't find a way to get it. It's very specific.
I had to work some hints. I had to
early on,
because the title's very specific. But when we're talking about things getting away from us, and giving an arm for something, and jonesing, as in Tommy.
Oh, I didn't even notice that one.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was about to suggest maybe Harrison Ford steps in for the Robert Redford. Robert Harrison Ford.
Well, he's got the red hair, so he's the the Red Ford.
Yeah, and before we say any Julianne Moore, I know John just wants to ward off all of these puns.
I want to see how you're going to fit in Jane Lynch.
Well,
I'm afraid. I'm afraid is what I'm saying.
No, I'm not going to fit in. The whole Jane linchpin of this is.
Yeah, that's the only way to do it.
That was the only way. Yeah. Anyway, we're talking about The Fugitive, 1993. Andrew Davis with Harrison Ford, Tommy Lee Jones,
and if anybody's wondering how this fits into our March movies, if you watch with a close eye, it takes place during March. So
you don't need that close of an eye.
Well, you don't need that close of an eye.
You don't need to keep your eyes and ears peeled.
You don't have to keep your eyes and ears peeled for a new Honda. But if you pay attention to one particular scene, then you'll know what we're talking about. So with that, Dan,
it has very much to do with March on multiple levels.
Yes, I agree. That's that particular scene. Yes. So Dan, as you are running to a time machine to go back and watch Lions for Lambs, I don't know. I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.